My name is Ali. I'm an alcoholic. I appreciate the invite, but I'm also nervous as far as this goes. So my sobriety date is October 15th, 2011. Um, uh, so with that, I think for me, and I'll get into my story. I've been fortunate that was the first time I tried to get sober, really, and it's stuck so far. And I have Alcoholics Anonymous to thank for that, and my relationship with God. So I immigrated. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from Iran in 1978 when I was 5 with my family. We came over here because my dad was going to finish up and get his PhD, and then we were supposed to go back because he worked for the royal government at the time in Iran. So we were supposed to go back. But then in 1979, I don't know if anybody knows history, there was a revolution in Iran, and so we were stuck. We were stuck. My dad decided not to go back, and then they also had that hostage crisis. Because of that. Our family was very, my parents were very protective of us. It was myself and 2 sisters. And so we were very private. We were from kind of secrets, just because they were really worried about, reactions or ramifications towards Iranians at that time. Really, we just didn't share about where we came from very much at all. And we really kept our home life very private as well. Like I said, I have 2 sisters, one 7 years older than me and one 6 years younger. Um, so shortly after my little sister was born, when I was 6, my parents split up, and I went and myself and my mom, or us 3 kids and my mom lived together. So my mom's side of the family is where the alcoholism comes from. So my grandfather on my mom's side was a violent man, violent alcoholic. So from what I've heard, he drank heavily and was very abusive to the kids and the wife in Iran. And so my mom never drank, but I guess you would call her a dry drunk. So she grew up with the example of her parents, and so raised us with that example as well. So in our house, it wasn't a matter of if any of us were going to get into trouble. It was a matter of who was going to get into trouble that day and how bad it would be. So really, we tried to, we were very much, well, it ended up being that my little sister and I kind of got closer with that, kind of protected each other as much as we can. My older sister, because she was alone for the first 7 years with my mom, she had a different relationship. It was kind of, she was out for herself to protect herself. So she was definitely felt disconnected in that way. Um, and then as we grew up, my mom was very religious. She was Muslim. And so the way we were raised, my first exposure to God, and this is a child interpretation. God is always watching and He's keeping score. And at the end of your life, he adds up the score, and whichever score is higher, good versus bad stuff, that's where you're going to go based on whatever higher score you have. So really, that was ingrained. It's like do wrong, and God's going to get you. Is really the impression. Growing up as a kid, again, being in a not from this country, we started in LA and then moved to Dallas, and then in LA it was different. There were a few Iranians there, but in Dallas there was none. It was very white, very very white, where we lived in Richardson, Texas. And so really, I felt disconnected, different from the rest of my world, and I wasn't able to make friends like other kids. I was kind of shy as a kid, and I felt I had to lie about where I came from. So I just felt like I felt like a fraud from a really young age as well, just a phony. Um, so my first drink was when I was 11 at a wedding. So I had champagne. My dad actually gave me the glass of champagne. I was supposed to have a sip. I had a glass, of course, and I remember the funny feeling. It felt kind of good, but it was just kind of felt kind of loopy. And then my first drunk was when I was 15. And 15, I was at a coworkers, and I had beers. I don't even know how many I had at that point. But that first drunk, it was a blackout drunk. When I came to, I was in my bed at home in my own vomit, and so that was my first experience, and I wanted to do it again. And I think the one thing I remember with that experience is that it was the first time that I just felt comfortable in my own skin. I felt like nobody cared about my story. It wasn't about that. It was about the moment, about enjoying the moment, having a good time. I could talk to girls. That was the first time I was actually talked to girls. So, and I was, and it was just a different life experience. And I just wanted to go back to that. It was the solution to all my problems. Really is what it came down to. It was a solution to all my problems at that time. And so while but living at home, again, my mom was very strict, so there wasn't very much. I wasn't going out drinking very much in high school. But when I went to college, I went away to college down to California, and it just went off the rails for me at that point. I pledged a fraternity like the first month I was there, and the heavy drinking and discovering other substances was all part of my experience there. But I basically spent my freshman year getting loaded, and I failed all my classes. So I was in college 1 year, and then came back home after that. When I got back, school was okay for me. Like high school, I did all right. I consider myself a clever guy. So I ended up doing some odd jobs, and I ended up falling into sales. I was selling computer chips for a company I fell into, and I realized I really I really thrived off the instant gratification of closing a sale. It was just something it became a drug to me as well, because not only was I getting affirmation that I did a good job, but I get money. And so that money, and then tying money to actions. And part of sales, at least the way I was doing it, is part of it's making up stories. Part of it for me. And so with that, I was kind of good at that anyways from growing up. So it actually, and then getting reinforcement from my first mentor's father figure, my first sales boss, that all just added to it as far as really connecting me with that. It really drove into my second addiction, which was money. Money was definitely, and quick money with that. In this work that I did, heavy drinking was acceptable. This was the early 90s. And I remember our boss used to take us out on Monday nights. We'd go to happy hour on Monday nights. And he said, this is training for when you're out with clients and you need to liquor them up so they'll share company secrets, but you got to be sober enough to remember them later. So we'd go out drinking heavily, like heavy on Mondays, and he'd call that training to get ready. So really got into the drinking there as well. Drinking was fun in the 20s. I had a good time. There was really no consequences. I was drinking and driving a lot, but not getting caught. And it felt like everybody around me, like I said, my coworkers were kind of doing the same thing. It was kind of just fast and loose in the 90s there. And then I got my first DUI in 2000. And that one, I'm thankful I didn't hurt anybody in that one. I had gone out drinking the night before, and then the last thing I remember is I thought I had a flat tire. I changed the tire, and then I got in my car, and then the next thing I know, I woke up, and it's the daytime. Behind the wheel of my car, and the car's running. So I started driving again, but the car wasn't going straight. Like for some reason, I couldn't have it go straight. I didn't realize I had broken the axle. I hadn't actually gotten a flat tire, but I was so drunk still. I kept driving until sparks started flying from the car. And the car finally came to a halt. Cop came, arrested me. I got off because I had money with diversion after all of that. So I didn't actually get a DUI, but so I felt like I got away with it there as well. But I did get demoted at work. So that did affect my work, and I wasn't able to keep the job that I had, the position that I had. I ended up shortly after that moving to Arizona to follow a girl and to try to get a fresh start as well. In Arizona, things didn't work out with the girl, but I did get 2 more DUIs. And it was interesting. What I learned from those DUIs is I should stop driving, not stop drinking, but stop driving at least. With that said, I was down there. The job I had, I lost then down in Arizona. Actually, it was partly because I was kind of being lazy and wasting it with drinking, and partly it was because of 9/11. Like the company just lost a lot of business during that time, right after that. And so I got another job and ended up getting moved to Florida, down to Broward County, like Fort Lauderdale area. And so, and that was good timing for me. I kind of want to get it out of Arizona. But for me, Florida, the drinking and the using and getting loaded went to new levels for me. Really, this is my early 30s. I was very lonely because I knew nobody out there. I was living in hotels at this point, and I was spending the money I get. I spend my time at like strip bars, things of that nature. Just just not making connections besides drinking there. Uh, Part of that was the fact that it's a transactional. I for me, going to those adult bars was kept it transactional, kept it so I can keep my private life secret, because again, I still felt like a phony and I didn't want to share where I really was, or my past. So I didn't have to. These were people at work, frankly. So and so things weren't going that great, but for whatever reason, I was able to keep a good facade at work, and I got promoted at the new company I worked at and became a sales trainer for them. So then they shipped me around the country. So now, good news, that the fact that I didn't have an apartment, I was in a hotel. I lived in hotels for the next 2 years, traveling to different cities on the company's dime, which allowed me to really not having any no one had any expectations of how I should act, because nobody knew me wherever I was going. And so, just to give you a few, I guess, highlights of that time, I was in Atlanta. I was driving a coworker's car. I left a strip joint. I got pulled over at the Chattahoochee River. I remember that. I just crossed that river and got put into the Fulton County Jail. Blacked out. Don't remember that experience at all. I was told about it afterwards. In San Diego, I was leaving a bar. I got into a cab. The last thing I remember, getting into a cab. The next thing I know, I woke up in an abandoned car with no shoes on. Don't know what that happened. And really, the issue with that is I not only did I not know where I was at or how it ended up there, the shame. And I'm like, I'm in a new city. The next day I have to be at work, and I don't even know where to begin. This is like early in the morning. So these these experiences didn't dissuade me from drinking. They just made me want to do it more. Just to, again, put those behind me. I still felt like I was a functioning alcoholic. I guess kind of I was. At least I was going to work. The company I worked for ended up relocating me up here to Seattle. That's how I ended up here. I moved in with my boss that hired me, and that kind of calmed my drinking a little bit. I had to keep some sort of appearances living with my boss. But then I got again promoted again at work to a manager. And with me, once at that position, a lot of my friends, which were my coworkers, weren't my friends anymore, because now I was their boss. So it really created a new level of loneliness for me and disconnection, which then sent me looking for other ways to mask those feelings. So I ended up drinking and getting loaded out and trying other things out in the world, and really, that was where the true downward spiral started for me back in 2006. And then it was really seismic change. I went from being in that management position to failing a drug test and getting fired from that job, and then looking for jobs where they didn't drug test. But even though they didn't drug test, I was still getting fired because of performance, or just coming and looking visibly loaded at work. They're like, you can't show up at work, or having stuff on me at work, things of that nature. So it was, for me, I wasn't living with my boss anymore at this point. I was couch surfing. And as time progressed, I described this as seismic change. Slowly but surely, I was choosing to accept and tolerate a lower and lower bottom. So couch surfing, living with other people's apartments, getting evicted, squatting in abandoned homes and basements, being homeless on the streets, committing crimes to stay loaded, and tolerating actions that I normally would not tolerate around me, being done to others or being done to me. All this happened within a 5-year period. So at the end, so really, and then at the end, I was really, all I was around surrounding myself with folks that were getting loaded the way I was getting loaded. So it was, there was no exposure to anyone. Nobody that was not in the scene, we'll call it, would ever answer my phone call at this point. I had no connection with family anymore. Any old friends would not want anything to do with me. I remember running into someone at a bar that I hadn't seen in a while, a female in a bar, and she looked at me, and I saw tears well up in her eyes. from what she saw. And I was a little perplexed, but I think about it now. It's like that was what I was presenting out there, just because I'd reached that point. Um, you know, in the end, there was, like I said, no self respect. There was no life purpose for me, except for getting loaded and staying loaded. That was the only reason I was getting up in the morning to do anything. Was how do I get the next experience? What do I need to do? Who do I need to trick, or what do I need to steal or do in order to keep this party going? I finally I reached a moment, of clarity in a hotel room. I remember, for whatever reason, I was in between um, hits, I guess, and I'd sobered up a bit, and it hit me where I was at and who was around me, and the danger of my situation, and um, it brought tears to my eyes. I was basically sobbing. I was inconsolable in a place where you can't be sobbing. It wasn't safe to be doing that. A friend of mine saw me and pulled me aside and ended up helping me get loaded again, just to turn off those emotions. And it was at that moment I realized how powerless I am over this. I can't not use. I realized I can't not use, because I can't function in the world without it. But I don't want to use. I could see I don't want to do the things I'm doing. So I don't know. I just didn't know what the solution was. And frankly, I was too much of a chicken to kill myself. I didn't have the guts to kill myself. So I needed to figure out another way. And so I ended up checking myself into a 28-day treatment down in Sumner, just to get out of it, thinking that maybe that's the magical solution. I hadn't done treatment before, so I didn't know what the experience was, but I thought there was something magical. You go to treatment and you come back and you're fine. That's what I was hoping. So I went there and it was good. I ended up stop using. So when I checked myself in, so to give you an idea, I weighed 120 pounds. I was I was smoking heavily cigarettes. I walking up 2 flights of stairs would have made me winded. My joints hurt. Everything hurt. My brain was pretty much mush. That the idea of constructing a complete sentence was hard. And so I had a stutter. I still kind of have a stutter, but that came during the using. So that's the state I was when I went in. There, I learned about addiction. I learned about the medical part of it, the fact that the hedonic, the hedonic. And we talked about pause, and we talked about all the things you learn about in treatment. So I left. I left there feeling like I know what this is about now. Now I have knowledge. That I'm equipped with knowledge to go out in the world and get my life back together. So I was leaving, and I'm going to go see my girlfriend that I just left before going to treatment, who's staying at the crack house. But that's okay, because I'm ready. So I show up I find her, and I realize within hours of leaving treatment, I was all those 28 days bought me was one no. So she said, "You want something?" I said, "No." She goes, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Okay." That's it. That's all I got from that. And that hit me there. It's like I can't trust myself. I can't hold myself accountable right now, because I really am, just like they were talking about, I am powerless over alcohol. Alcohol is my first drug for sure. And my life was clearly unmanageable. So what am I going to do? How am I going to find a solution here? Somebody had told me about in the treatment, told me about the Salvation Army. And I had no money. Like I said, nobody was answering my phone call. I ended up, after leaving my girlfriend, I spent a night at the Union Gospel Mission shelter downtown, the one on 3rd Avenue, I believe. So I spent Sunday night there. Monday morning, I went and checked myself in early Monday morning at the Salvation Army. It used to be on 4th Avenue. I remember it's a 3-story building. So there's a parking. It's gone now. There's a parking lot. You go up the stairs, and then there's like the main living room area and kitchen, and then upstairs is where the residences are, like the dorms are. And so I went up to the main area to check myself in, and I remember walking up there. I miss that building, because it was a beautiful sunny fall October day, and the windows were open on both sides. The sun was just rising, and it was glorious. It was just such a glorious moment, and I remember the sense of calm and relaxation just walking up there. And I sat down, and I had a backpack, and during the last year or so, that backpack, I'd never not had that backpack like in my clutches, like never let that thing go, because all my stuff was in there, all my everything was in there. So this is the first time I was able to lay it down and like leave it and like walk away from it. And it was one of those. It was such a release to be able to do that, and then to meet like-minded men there. There was 100 guys living there, and then to be able to at least realize that I'm not that special. I'm not alone. There's a lot of folks trying, and a lot of folks that have had experiences like mine, maybe worse, maybe not as bad, but definitely gone down a similar path as me, which made me feel better. It made me feel better that I'm not the person. The stuff I've done, I've done lots of bad stuff, but is it the worst stuff? Am I the only one that's ever done it? Frankly, no, it's not. It's not. That's what I learned as far as this goes. So, um, one of the questions they ask when you get checked into Salvation Army is, what is your, because it is a church, so they ask, what is your relationship to God? What do you think about God? And I remember my answer at that point. My answer was, belief in God when you're living on the streets is inconvenient. So I didn't really have a belief in that. And from my past experience, from what I thought God was, from what my mom taught me, my feeling was, after I left the house and was doing whatever I was doing, either God doesn't care or he doesn't exist, one of the two. And so that's where I came in to the Salvation Army. And with that, it was it's a 6-month program. I ended up spending 11 months there because that's what I needed to really make this program work. And it was there where I was able to really rest and really focus on how I can get better, and focusing on the spiritual side of the program. We're working on the 12 steps. One of the requirements of that program is that you go to meetings, 5 meetings a week. You get a sponsor, you get a service position. You need to start your 4th step by the 3rd month and complete your 5th step by the 5th month. So they have very strict rules, or you're kicked out. And I didn't want to get back on the streets there. So there's a sense of urgency for me as far as working the steps. The biggest step for me was step 2, though. Again, because I felt that I realize now, I felt that I wasn't worthy of having a relationship with God. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to believe in it. I didn't want to even go down that path. So it just took a long time. And I remember one of the guys that I was in there with, he talked about it. He says, well, have you asked God? I said, no. I said, no. He said, well, just ask him, just ask and see what happens. If he's not there, nothing's going to happen, right? Just ask. So, and that tiny crack and just that thinking there was enough to get me down that path. And I'm thankful that I asked and I paid attention and I saw. So that's my experience. I definitely had that. Once I saw tiny things that are personal, deeply personal, but clearly not accidental, happening in my life, made me slowly but surely believe that that God can restore me back to sanity, and then to ask Him for that direction, which led me into working the steps. Being in the Salvation Army allowed me, with the 4th step, I could focus on just doing that writing, and I spent a good half hour to an hour a day. And I remember having my book and pacing and getting mad and doing, just having all sorts of emotions, but finishing that 4th step as my sponsor showed me, doing the columns, going through the 4th column, and what I learned from that is that there's 2 big patterns in my life. I am a very selfish and self-seeking person. It's like, to the point I'm oblivious to other people when left to my own devices. And the second one is, fear drives almost everything, all my reactions. And the way I react when I'm scared is I get mad. And I might get violent. So that's what I did. That's what I learned there. So, and really it came to as a fear of being found out for being the phony that I am. That's what I felt. When I read the 5th step to my sponsor, he was able to kindly point out the pettiness of my resentments, and point out patterns that I didn't see as I was writing it, and really focusing on the fact that I'm not special. And I thank God that I'm not. And really, there were certain things that I was so scared to share with somebody, and I shared it. It was like not even a big deal. Like, he's like, me too. And I'm like, what? And it was just such a relief to have that type of experience with them. Today, I think I was really originally I was very fearful of doing going through and through the 9th step and making those amends. I've learned now that I can't. I haven't completed them all. There's a lot of them I can never complete. They just end up being living amends. But it's interesting how God, my higher power, has put in front of me the amends that I need to do. There was one that I was dreading a lot, which was an ex of mine that I ended up just disconnecting with, and I felt a lot of guilt and shame about how we broke it off, and I hadn't seen her in years. I thought I'd never run into her, and one day at the gym, at the place I was working out, at a very random location, she just walked in. She just walked in, and I had to do a double take, and it hit me. I'm like, oh my gosh, God damn it, I got to make an amends here on the spot. I can't. I mean, it's right there in front of me. And the interesting was, I was so dreading this amends, and I go up to her and I go, hey, her name was Linda. I said, hey, Linda, um, this is Ali. Do you remember me? She goes, no. And I'm like, I'm Corey's friend, from back then. She goes, no, I'm just not ringing a bell. And it hit me at that point. I'm like, I've been dreading this, and she's not thought twice about me and all this. And that was such a relief. Again, my self-centeredness was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna punch me in the face. She's been pining away from me or whatever. But nope. She hadn't thought about me. I think like later on, she's like, oh yeah, and like it was nothing. It was nothing to her. And so that was the biggest lesson I learned. Is like how we react and perceive the world is ours alone. And so that's what the ninth step taught me. It's like I have this perception, and then on the flip side, I've had friends where I'm like, hey, I'm going through the steps. Part of it is making amends. You're not. I didn't feel I had any amends, but I'm learning that sometimes I miss stuff. Is there anything that I should know that I need to make right with you? And I've had folks like give me a laundry list, and I'm like, I didn't even know. I had no idea I'd done all those different things to them. So it definitely opens up my eyes to be much more thoughtful today. I think the 10th step is something I try to practice every day. I appreciate, good or bad, asking for my higher power's direction every day, and then just paying attention. I found it to be an easy way of living, and it doesn't require any kind of master plan. I just need to sit back and just say, I'm open, I'm ready, I'm going to pay attention, and then follow the direction that's in front of me. With the 11th step, I'm sorry, and then with the 12th step for me, as Lara mentioned, service keeps me sober. So not only working with others, but I think giving back as much as I can to AA, which was given to me so freely, and wanting AA to support AA in any way that I'm capable of doing. So one thing I spent a lot of time doing when I was in my addiction was spending time getting high, getting loaded, finding ways to get loaded, scheming to keep the party going. And now, why can't I do that now for AA to allow AA to grow? So, as I mentioned, seismic change is what happened as far as from my downward spiral. It's also been seismic change as far as the improvements. Today, I've gone from being a selfish person to being really focusing on being of service to others and to society. I've gone from being isolated and really being protective to trying to being really welcoming to honest connections. I've gone from being guilty about my past and anxious about my future to being present and just trusting God to reveal His will for me and to follow that. And then from feeling unworthy and not only seeing, so for lack of being worthy, but I see a lot more self-worth now. I think I feel I have things to contribute, and I feel that I'm contributing from a genuine place now, which I wasn't before. I don't have ulterior motives now, and so I feel better about doing that. And then today I want to live because I have reasons to live. And I choose to rely on others, and others choose to rely on me. My family answers the call when I call, and I call them, and then they answer when I call, and I answer when they call. Same with my friends. Before I never picked up the phone unless I wanted something. And having that connection, rebuilding with my dad, which I hadn't seen in almost 20 years at one point, rebuilding with my younger sister that had been disconnected for so long since she was 18. And then connecting with my older sister as well. It's been invaluable. And today, I'm the stable one. That I'm the person they come to, to ask for advice or direction, which is blows my mind that that's the case today. That was definitely not the case before. The fact that anybody would trust me with anything before would be amazing. So, and I think yeah, with that, we're done. So thank you. Thanks for.